Tears of Gaia by Redback Spino. Chapter 8. From one pink to the other. For a moment that seemed to last an eternity, neither party moved a muscle. The 7 ponies were frozen on the spot at the entrance of the cave. Their breaths caught in their throats as they stared with wide eyes at the cave's lone occupant. Similarity. The fast, crimson dragon sat motionless on the other end, his enormous body filling nearly half the cave, staring back at the ponies with massive yellow eyes. There came a feeble squeak from somewhere in the back of the group, which echoed throughout the cave. Then, all hell broke loose. The dragon opened wide its enormous mouth, and with an ear-splitting roar, sent forth a massive plume of red fire. In the last seconds before they all became ponies flambe, Rainbow Dash finally found her voice again, and screamed at the top of her lungs, "Take cover!" The 7 scattered in all directions, sprinting alongside the cave wall as the fireball exploded at the entrance, desperate to find cover wherever they could. Twilight, Starscroll, and Applejack huddled together behind a massive boulder to the left of the entrance, while Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie led the others on a run down to a small wall of stalagmites. The dragon stretched out its limbs, each the size of a tall tree, slowly lifting itself off the ground as it roared in rage. As Twilight raised her head to get a good look, she felt her blood run cold at the sheer scale of it. It was almost twice the size of any dragon she had seen. Even among the massive swarm of dragons that had made the Great Migration last year, she had never seen one quite the same size. Scales each the size of a dog shone red in the mingled red light of its fire, and the ethereal multicolored light of its twin lanterns. Huge pale horns protruded from its head, just above its massive brow, the same color as its claws and teeth. A line of ridges ran from the back of its skull down its back, until they formed a mass of spiky horns at the end of its tail. Huge ragged springs sprouted from its back, furled for the moment in the tight confines of the cave. "What in the hell is that doing here?" Applejack shouted above the din. Twilight peeked over the top of the boulder to see the dragons watching her friends running with hungry eyes. "It must be guarding the Tears, right, Starswell?" The old unicorn nodded.
"Aye, as I said, it would be quite likely that such a possible artifact would be guarded and protected. But the dragon? I'd never anticipated that."
"Well, what do we do now?"
"We can't exactly drive it off. The entrance is too small."
For the briefest second, Twilight's fear and panic gave way to scientific curiosity. "Hey, that's right. How did it get here in the first place, then?"
"Back on topic, if you please, Twilight,"
said Starswirl as he yanked Twilight back from peeking over the top again. The boulder suddenly shook as a second fireball cannoned to the other side of it. The 3 ponies cowered lower behind it. On the other side of the cave, Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, and Rarity leapt from behind the stalagmite formation, took cover behind a small ridge of stone, and just in time, too, as the dragon's massive tail came upon the stalagmites. The tail spikes, each the size of a bear, crushed the rock formation to dust. Rainbow Dash walked droplets of perspiration from her brow. "This is nuts! I gotta get past this guy! I bet he's blocking the way to wherever the Tears are! But how?" Rarity breathed. "This beast would turn us into charcoal before we even close to it!" As if emphasizing her point, a blast of heat and fierce red glow from the other side of the ridge indicated the impact of another massive torrent of flames. Rainbow Dash desperately racked her brain for some sort of idea. The growing heat of the boulders at her back was an ever-present indicator that time was quickly running out. "Rainbow, we gotta move!" Piggy's shrill cry brought her back to reality as the air around them began to ripple, and the far side of the ridge began to glow red. Pinkie Pie looked around for some new hiding place and saw a perfect hiding spot, a particularly broad stone column. Beckoning to Rainbow Rarity, she expertly cartwheeled from out behind the ridge, the dragon's fire just sensing the tip of her tail. With mere nanoseconds to spare, she rolled along to the column and crouched low behind it. She beckoned with a hoof to the other 2 ponies. Rainbow Dash zoomed from the ridge to the stone column, so fast that the naked eye could barely register it as any sort of teleportation. Rarity hung back at a moment, not fierce enough to make such a run with dragon glaring at her. The massive red monstrosity stooped its head low as it approached the boulder where Rarity was hidden. Opening its gaping maw wide, he tensed up his muscles and prepared to lunge forward. Before it could, 2 blasts of magic struck it in the back of its head. Twisting around, it saw Twilight and Starswirl standing atop of the boulder, horns aglow as they prepared to launch another blast of magic missiles. Rarity saw her chance as the dragon turned away from her to deal with the other unicorns. Her gaze focused on Pinkie and Rainbow. She ran with all her might, jumping haphazardly over the beast's massive tail. With one final stumble, she came skidding to her face bent behind the column. Pinky held Rarity up. Any ideas yet, Rainbow? Asked the unicorn as he dusted off the grit off her shoulders. Rainbow peeked out from behind a pillar, watching a star swirl shot a beam of yellow magic straight into the dragon's face. It reeled back, each step reverberating through the ground, shooting random blasts of fire at the ceiling as it stumbled. I got one! Hey, Pinky! Do you think you could get over to the others? Oh, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. Even though I don't have sleeves, but that would just be weird if I actually had sleeves. But yeah, I can get to them easily. Pinky shot back. Good. Here's my plan. I'm gonna fly up to the dragon, buzz around its head, and keep him distracted. Then you guys run around him, under him, whatever. Just get past him. Rainbow explained. Rarity gasped. But Rainbow, that's too dangerous. Not to undermine your self-confidence, but surely you remember what happened last time you fought a dragon alone. Rainbow winked. That's the thing. I'm not going to be alone. Pinky, I need you to get over to the others and tell Twilight and Starswirl that once every pony's past the dragon, they start blasting it with some spells to distract it, and I'll make my getaway. Pinky saluted and began making her way towards the entrance of the cave, where the others were hidden. Rainbow and Rarity had no idea how she would manage to move quick and stealthily enough for the dragon not to see her. But as they watched her, their fears were quickly put aside. With leaps and bounds of uncharacteristic gait and balance, Pinky managed to weave her way around the dragon's stomping feet and sleeking tail, before diving behind a rock just by the cave wall. She ducked behind a rock and, in some bizarre mockery of reality itself, popped back up behind the same boulder that Twilight, Starswirl, and Applejack were hidden behind. Before Twilight could even somewhat sputter in disbelief, Pinky rattled off in one breath, Twilight! Okay, Rainbow says that she's going to distract the dragon while we all make a run for it behind the cave, because mostly that's where it's hiding the tears. Then, once you clear of it, you and Stars will start blasting it with your magic and stuff, and Rainbow can make her escape! Pinky, as he paused a moment to take a breath, got all that? After a second of Twilight running over what she heard, the unicorn nodded. Let's do it! Pinky nodded, and turned to find shelter behind another rock. She paused a moment, however, when she noticed something. Hey, isn't Fluttershy with you? I thought she was with you guys, Twilight replied. You sure she's not over there with you? Sure, I better go find her before we try this! But Rainbow Dash, it seemed, had other ideas. As soon as he saw Pinky finish telling Twilight her plan, the Pegasus unfurled her wings and took to the air. She flew high up, almost to the cave ceiling, hovered there for a moment as she looked over the layout of the cave for anything she could use in her favor. All right, she told herself. Distracted time! Here we go! She dived. The dragon's massive head followed her. Rainbow knew what was coming, and flew low just in time. A plume of crimson fire zoomed over her head, and exactly where she had just been, blackening the tips of her tail, but leaving her otherwise unscathed. No worries, she thought to herself. No different than those cloud blasters at the academy. Go! Now! She shouted to the others, who immediately began sprinting towards the other side of the cave, which remained obscured by the dragon's massive bulk. For a moment, she could hear Starswirl's deep voice shouting out, By the six, Twilight, that friend of yours is an incredible flyer! Rainbow smiled to herself for the compliment, but kept her mind on the task at hand, zooming down at the dragon's head. She flew rings around him, watching as it whipped his head around and around, trying to keep up with her. As he catches up, he should be nice and dizzy soon enough. Unfortunately, even with her fast eyes, Rainbow was only able to keep an eye on two of the dragon's defenses at a time. For this decoy attack, she had been focused mostly on the fireball spewing from its mouth and its huge spiked tail. She did not notice the huge hands, tipped with claws like pickaxe blades, until it was too late. As he swerved up to avoid him, one of the claws slashed a shallow gash into her shoulder. Inside the entrance to the tunnel, Fluttershy held it up against the cavern wall. Eyes firmly shut, and foreheads clamped on her ears to block out the sound of the bell going inside the cave. As the dragon roared again, she whimpered, Dragon? Why did it have to be a dragon? Why couldn't it have been something else? Anything else? She knew that she had to help her friends. She wanted to help her friends, but how could she face that monster? One breath of fire, and we're all goners. And that's just the fire. There's still the razor-sharp claws, the sinuses, teeth, and face pulses, and the tail spikes. Then she heard a new sound. A scream of pain and shock. Not for the dragon, but an old familiar voice. She hazarded a peek into the cavern, and froze as she saw the source of the scream. It was like time itself had slowed down. Just by the dragon's left shoulder, Rainbow Dash was flapping weakly in the air. Blood dripped from a gash in her shoulder, was snaked around her back, across her shoulder blades to the base of her wings. The spray of red that still hung in the air drew her eye to the dragon's tail spikes, the very tip of which was stained with fresh blood. In an instant, Fluttershy snapped. Flying with a speed born of newfound rage ferocity, she was up inside the dragon's face in an instant, landing on the monster's beast snout and shrieking with rage. How dare you hurt my friend,
friends! You meanie! You should be ashamed of yourself! Attacking any other creatures for no reason! This victim you gives you the right to attack anybody you want!
The dragon's eyes bulged with shock and bewilderment as this tiny creature seemed to show no fear as it shouted in his face. Before the dragon had any chance to respond, be it with words, roars, or more fire, Fluttershy clenched her eyes shut for a moment before opening them full and staring straight into the dragon's face. Now, dragons are known for many things. Their insatiable greed for jewels and precious metals, their breath weapons, which range from common fire breath to the poisonous toxic gas breathers, the less common earth dragons, which spewed up endless heap of loam and dirt, and even the rare dragons that could actually breathe out thunderclouds. The ferocity in their size were well known about them too. The fears, however, were never not well known. No pony had ever witnessed a dragon truly expressing fear, at least not in known accounts. This dragon had been never more terrified in his life. There was something in this pony's eyes that frightened him more than anything he had encountered. They were like deep, dark pits into the depths of someone's worst nightmares. They were staring into the pits of Tartarus itself. Every time the dragon tried to make some sound in protest, Fluttershy stepped closer and closer to the beast's gargantuan eye, until she was almost touching it. Finally, the dragon could take no more, and he lowered his head down. Then his body as he lay down on his belly, resting his hand on the cavern floor. Fluttershy hopped off on his snout, and he placed his clawed hands on his hand and closed his eyes in submission. A rank cheer rose up from the ponies who lay scattered around the cave as they rushed up to Fluttershy.
That was incredible!
Piggy squealed as she swept amid timid Pegasus and a rib-crossing head. Applejack shook her head in wonder. Well, boy, looks like that whole incident back at Smoke Mountain was a fluke after all, huh, girls?
Wait,
Starsoul muttered, raising a horror hoof.
You mean to say she has done this thing before?
You mean staring down a dragon? Oh, yeah, she's been there before, Rainbow said as he came limping past the dragon's prostrate form. In a flash, Pinky grabbed her in a massive hug as well. Ah! Pinky! Watch the shoulder!
Oh, sorry.
Pinky loosened her grip on the hapless Pegasus in an instant. Fluttershy rushed off in a moment towards the cave entrance, returning with her shell bags.
Hold still, Rainbow Dash. How bad is it?
Not too bad, Rainbow shrugged. Hurts like all heck, but I'll be fine.
Well, at least let me bandage it up a bit.
Fluttershy replied as he extracted a small roll of bandages from her saddlebags. With a gentle touch born of years of experience, she examined the jagged gash that ran from her shoulder to her wing, and wrapped the bandages around the top of Rainbow's foreleg and the base of her left wing, before taping the final lace of bandage over her shoulder blade.
There, that'll at least stop the bleeding. You're right, the cut was pretty shallow, so you'll be fine once it heals over.
Twilight smiled, not just happy that her friend was not seriously wounded, but that somehow they came out of a fierce battle with a dragon relatively unscathed. Rainbow scratched his side. The damage amounted to little more than a few scrapes and bruises, and some singed manes and tails. Soon, the ponies were wandering fiercely about the cave, seeking out any nook and cranny where the tears might be hidden. They had already encountered a mysterious statue, a glowing mountain, and a guardian dragon. A hidden chamber that did not seem like too much of a stretch. But even with Applejack bucking every loose shelf off rocks, Pinky clambering over every possible hiding place, Rainbow Dash checking the higher walls, Starsoul spells, and even Twilight's and Rarity's gem-shining magic searching for hidden places, the result was the same. Just one big cave with one entrance and one exit, nothing more. Fluttershy, meanwhile, had chosen to stay with the dragon, who remained in his prostrate position in the middle of the chamber, laying on his front with his chin resting on the cave floor. Fluttershy paced back and forth in front of the dragon, a proud smile on her face and a slight spring in her step. Thus she was sure to keep a safe distance from the monster. She did not often feel like to raise her voice at other creatures, but who knows what the dragon could have done to her friends had she not. But they were safe now because of her. Once more, she had overcome her fears of dragon once again. Granted, it was for the sake of her friends and not herself, but still, that feeling of pride was amazing. Her smile slipped a notch, however, as she saw the strange look in the dragon's eye. Gone was the primal rage it had when it first attacked, or the feral fear it felt when she had turned her stare upon it. Now, I was looking at her eyes that looked sort of glazed over, and of all things, tired. The dragon stared at her with a look of rare resignation, as if to say,
Go ahead, do it. Finish me off.
For the first time in her life, Fluttershy felt pity for her dragon. Hesitantly, she edged towards the massive ace of the beast, step by step, until she was close enough to raise a quivering foreleg and gently pat the dragon's cheek.
It's okay. We're very sorry for the intrusion. Don't worry. As soon as we found what we're looking for, we'll be on our way, and you can get back to sleeping.
Suddenly, the Draconic's dragon eyes widened in apparent surprise, and he rumbled what could have been a feral draconic, "Huh?"
It's all right. We're not going to hurt you.
The Pegasus didn't notice a change in the dragon's eyes. It was as if a veil or mist fell over from his eyes, and he seemed to gleam with and shine with new life. He lifted his head slightly and peered down at Fluttershy and smiled.
Thank you,
The dragon said. Fluttershy looked back with a frightened squeak.
You spoke! I mean, I know dragons can talk, which is very interesting on its own, but, well, I didn't realize you could speak. I thought you were a feral dragon or something.
Twilight, Rainbow, Rarity heard the dragon's sudden squeak, and heard Fluttershy's sudden squeak, and swiftly rushing to her side. Fluttershy, is everything all right? Asked Twilight. I heard you shout. The dragon's not trying anything, is he?
Lysander, try something. See, that's freed me,
Replied the dragon. Twilight's jaw dropped as it nearly left a dent on the floor. Rarity stepped forward.
Freed you? What do you mean by that?
Exactly that, my little pony, he said. I was put into the cave as a hatchling to guard something, a very special and powerful gemstone. The ponies who put me in here cast a spell on me, and by being the first pony to spare me, you broke that spell.
The ponies who... You mean the princesses? Twilight found her voice again. The dragon nodded.
This powerful gemstone you speak of.
The Star Swirl had just come to join the others.
It would not happen to be something called the Tears of Gaia, would it? Yes, that is what they called it,
He replied, his low voice echoing around the cavern.
But what was the spell they put on you? How did it work?
Twilight asked. Curiosity knows no bounds. The dragon took a moment to stretch out his massive limbs and tail.
That does feel good. The spell, well, it granted me the power and long life needed to guard the Teals forever against any creature that came looking for it. It could only be broken by the one who overpowered me in their search for it, but once I was defeated, would be willing to spare me.
He paused, as if to let the information sunk in. Twilight then thought back to the inscription above the doorway of the cave. Could Dad have said something about this? All other eyes turned to Fluttershy. The timid Pegasus sunk back for the attention, hiding her face behind a lock of hair.
Me?
Yes, you. You were the first creature to defeat me in a fight, but not kill me. That was the worst power of the spell. How every time I was killed, I would be brought back.
The dragon frowned as his voice became softer for a moment.
No matter how often I failed in my task, I would never have the honor of reaping the consequences. Instead, I would be brought back to live with the memory of my failures.
Fluttershy felt pity for the creature grow.
Oh, don't think like that, Mr. Dragon. I'm sure you've done a great job protecting the Tears. Otherwise, they would have probably been found by now.
The dragon cocked his head.
I suppose so. But whatever the case, I am free of that curse now, thanks to you. And for that, I am in your debt.
Fluttershy blushed slightly. She had never had anyone in her debt before.
Oh, you're very welcome, Mr.
Tharos is my name,
The dragon replied, bowing his head before the Pegasus.
My name is Tharos, and Tharos means me.
Well, okay. Well, Mr. Tharos, it's really okay. You don't need to be in my debt or anything. I'm happy to help.
But the dragon would hear none of it.
No, I must. Your wish is my command.
Twilight and Star Swirl looked to each other for a moment as he said this, and both nodded. Twilight then walked up to Fluttershy and whispered something in the pony's ear.
Uh-huh. Okay. I'll ask.
Fluttershy whispered back, clearing its throat. She said to Tharos,
Well, if it's okay with you, maybe you could show me, where the Tears are in?
Yeah, I mean, we did free you from a curse and all. It's the least you could do, right? Dazzle asked brusquely. The other 6 ponies glared at her for a moment, but Tharos smiled and nodded.
I suppose I do owe you that much. All right, climb on my back, and I'll take you to them.
Climb on your back? Asked Templejack. But where are we going? Like the Tears in here somewhere?
No, they were not.
Tharos replied.
They never were.
The cowgirl kicked at the cave floor with her hind legs. So basically, we just came all this way, just to find out we didn't need to come all this way? A deep bass chuckle escaped the dragon's mouth.
I suppose you could put it that way, little pony. Now, Applejack, don't despair just yet. Tharos, if you know where the Tears are, would you be willing to take us to them?
Starswell asked. He nodded, stretching one of his arms like a ramp.
Of course. As that rainbow pony says, it's the least I could do.
But the 7 ponies were hesitant to climb aboard, Rainbow Dash in particular.
How can we be sure he'll take us to the Tears?
See, he has a point. No offense, but it's not exactly the easiest thing to trust a full-grown dragon. Rather than be offended, Tharos simply shrugged and reared up on his hind legs, placing a single hand on his underbelly. He raised the other in his hand and said,
By the honor of a dragon of the old world, and by the fire in my belly, you have my word.
But how good is the word of honor as a dragon?
Better than most dragons of this age, I would imagine, if you distrust me too much.
Tharos carried with a grin.
I would sooner fly off face first into the mountainside to betray it.
There was a brief silence as Tharos' words echoed throughout the cavern. Every pony looked up at the massive dragon's face, looking for any sign of betrayal or falsehood. Tharos looked right back, his massive scaly face giving away nothing. Well, I guess you can't slay most of that. I don't know about you guys, but I'll trust them. Applejack said, breaking the silence at last. Let me up, Tharos! Tharos smiled as he stooped down on all fours, holding out one hand to Applejack. So he hopped into his palm and lifted her up and deposited her on his shoulder. One by one, the 7 ponies were hosted up on Tharos' shoulder blades. There was little shoulder ridges and spikes to hold on to or lean against. However, none were also willing to climb on a dragon. Fluttershy least of all. Come on, Fluttershy! It's perfectly safe, I swear! Rainbow Dash called out impatiently.
Yeah, it's fine. Come on up,
added Pinky.
It's actually pretty soft up here, just like the squishy floors you get at playgrounds.
You mean like mulch? Twilight muttered, giving the skin under her hoofs some experimental prod. Indeed, as tough as the scales no doubt were, they did have a certain degree of given to them. As Pinky said, much like freaking compressed mulch used to pad the ground at children's playgrounds. Just like she was dwelling on this intriguing discovery, however, seeing the 6 ponies were forced to make a hasty grab at anything could. As Tharos jostled to the side, another deep chuckle.
Don't do that! That self-serrates!
Twilight grinned sheepishly. She made a note to tread lightly while it's on Tharos' back. Who knows how many acupuncture points and nerve endings he might have accidentally triggered otherwise. Once he calmed down, Tharos lowered his head to Fluttershy's level, giving her what Hope was a gentle smile. Unfortunately, any smile from a dragon would show off hundreds of teeth of size of shovel blades. Fluttershy gave a fearful squeak and backed away even more.
Please, my little pony. I promise you can trust me. Just climb aboard,
he said in the gentlest voice he could, holding out his ready hand. After a few moments of hesitance, Fluttershy took another narrow step closer, then another and another. Then he placed an experimental forehoof in the palm of his hand. Reassured that he was not about to crush her to a yellow-pink smear on his claws, she clambered up into his hand.
Now, don't worry, little ones.
Tharos called over his shoulder as he placed Fluttershy with her friends.
I'll be sure to fly as smoothly as possible. Now, you might want to take cover and shield your eyes for a moment. It's about to get very hot for a moment.
The ponies all looked at each other with an unsure glance, but the ominous rumbling in Tharos' belly under them was all the confirmation they needed, and they quickly ducked down whatever they could find, covering their eyes. Tharos, meanwhile, was channeling every ounce of dragon fuel in his body, gathering it all in his belly, which began to swell like some massive balloon. The rumbling of the flames in his belly grew to a low roar as it massed inside him, until he could take no more. With one huge breath, he forced every last tongue of flame from his belly, up through his throat, and burst forth from his mouth in one massive blast. So bright and hot was it that it barely even looked like fire at all. It looked like some sort of strange hybrid, somewhere between being a flame and being pure light energy. No way, whispered Twilight, awestruck at the sight. Is he breathing plasma?
So!
The livid blue white ball of plasma smashed into the wall of the cave, exploding on impact. For a few seconds, all was consumed in a blinding light and a ringing in every pony's ears. Then, the light dimmed and the dust clouds cleared. Twilight cracked her eyes open and was dumbstruck. Her friends fared no better. Before them, there had been one massive solid stone wall, with nothing but tiny tunnels on the outside. There was now nothing but clear afternoon skies, visible through a massive, almost perfectly round hole, edges blackened, some patches still glowing orange from the heat.
Well, I was about to say something about giving someone as big as you are getting out of here,
Pinky finally said, almost nonchalantly.
but I guess you could say that you...
Don't even think about it, Pinky.
Huh?
Pinky looked over to frowning Rainbow Dash, who sat on the dragon's back by her side. Rainbow replied, I know exactly what you're going to say, and you better not say it. Pinky opened her mouth to speak. I said don't! Pinky paused a moment before letting a malicious grin grow on her face. Unable to contain herself, she finally spouted breakneck speed. But I guess you could say that you blew the necklace in a way, ha! Dang it, Pinky! For the first time since they entered the cave, the 7 ponies laughed. Darrell's low chuckles mingled with theirs. They clambered through the freshly blasted hole, pressing on the ledge.
Ugh, it feels good to stretch my legs again. All right, hold on now, little ponies.
And she felt 7 pairs of hooves cling tightly to his back. Darrell unfurled his wings wide for the first time in over millennia. With a final triumphant roar, he leapt off the ledge and swooped down into the cooled air. The excited and terrified shrieks of the ponies ringing loud and proud in his ears. Far, far below, at the very base of the shard, unbeknownst to Tharos or any of the ponies, 2 pairs of yellow black eyes watched the dragon and his passengers flying off into the distance, his triumphant bells echoing through the afternoon air.
And there they go.
Motok murmured to himself.
I thought for cook!
If I had known that there was a dragon in there, I would have brought someone who could fly.
Look!
Gadov grinned at his master's rather clever language.
What should we do now, sir?
He asked, as he watched Starros flying off towards the plains and out of sight. Motok sighed, his pointed teeth turning into a strange whistling sound.
Head back to the others and tell them to break camp now. When I get back, we're tracking that dragon like our lives at stake. Merely because if Rosalaka finds out we lost track of those ponies, they'll all have our heads!
The wild little creature nodded and scuttled back through the undergrowth towards his cohort's campsite. Motok hung back for a moment, looking up the dragon mountain high above them, complete with a brand new hole right to the side.
We better be careful about this,
he thought, before trotting back to his troops. By the time the sun was beginning to set, Tharos and the ponies were far from the Crystal Mountains, flying further and further south over Equestria. After the initial shock, the ponies had finally settled into the traveling on the back of the dragon, finding a sure hoofhold and scales, and the bumps at Tharos' back. Some of the more adventurous ponies, like Rainbow Dash and Pinky, even started to enjoy it. Hey, look! Pinky shouted as he pointed down at the tiniest mass of light down the ground below. I think that's Ponyfield down there! Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Cake! Hi, Going! Twilight felt a sudden tightness in her chest at the mindset of Ponyville. They had already been gone more than 2 weeks. With everything that had happened, it was hard to believe that they were so close to home. The sooner they got back, the better. Waiting until Tharos' flight got a bit smoother, she tentatively stood up and heaved herself up the dragon's back until she reversed at the base of his jaw. Tharos, how much longer until we reach where it is that we're going? She shouted up at his ears.
He looked back and gave her a reassuring smile. Not long now, he replied. We just need to wait until the sun goes down. Then I can do it.
Twilight peered at the sun, was accessible on the horizon. Do what? Before he could answer, his eye was drawn back to the horizon. The last rays of the golden sunlight dimmed, and the sky went dark. With a satisfied grin, he looked back at Twilight.
You might want to sit back down.
Unicorn quickly obeyed, letting herself slide back towards Tharos' shoulder blades, which he grabbed tightly onto his spine and watched anxiously for whatever the dragon was about to do. Finally satisfied, the sun was truly down. Tharos cleared his voice and shouted out in a loud, echoing, rumbling voice the words of such strange, ancient power.
Now fucking go for Kurgan! Yes, that!
Suddenly, there was another blinding flash of light, joined by a deafening roaring, like that of the savage winds that tear apart the sails of ships at sea, sending her crew hurtling toward dark waters. When Twilight's eyesight finally returned, her breath was taken away. Where there had once been a view of the plains and forests of Equestria before them, with a great peak of Canterlot to their right, and the Appalachian mountains in the distance, and now strange before them a strange alien landscape. Great rolling hills of green and yellow stretched far below them for miles around, forming into bizarre brown mountains in the farthest distance, which seemed to curve and droop over at touts, almost like cyclopean thorns growing from earth. Up above them, the once dark sky was now a vivid deep blue, like a sapphire. But in place of the moon, there hung a huge purple spear, like a ball of solid gas, almost filling up the sky with its vastness.
Overhead!
Wordlessly, every pony turned looked towards between Tharos' thorns. About a mile ahead of them, there learned a small patch of short white mountains. In the middle of all these rose up 2 enormous great columns of stone, dotted with massive chunks of green stone. One rose to a sheer point, with nothing but a tiny ledge on the side. The other side was flat, opening like a top at the crater of the volcano. Between the peaks, there stretched a length of smooth stone, forming a natural bridge between the pillars.
Behold, the Pillar of Prasnius, the final resting place of the Tears of Gaia!